Salutations, the name's Cavill. Someone recently asked if I have a guilty pleasure. Something I know is bad, but love regardless. What sprang to mind was Garfield's Pet Force, a film the kid me never got tired of, but looks pretty childish on the surface. Then I got to thinking, is this really a guilty pleasure, or did I just start assuming at some point that this film is bad? Either way, step back, because we're about to dissect the plot. In this version of Garfield, all newspaper comics live together in a place called Toon World. There's a parallel world called Dorkon where all superhero comics live together, including the almighty Garzuka. The king has developed a weapon called the Mosgram. If you shoot two people with it, it'll control their minds and swap around their body parts. As child-friendly as it is, I gotta appreciate how creepy these amalgamates are. I never thought I'd see body horror in a Garfield film, but here we are. My one question is why the hell King John created it. Dorkon doesn't seem hostile, but there aren't many excuses for biowarfare, and it really makes them look like the bad guys. Regardless, the Mosgram is instantly stolen by Vetvix, who plans to conquer the multiverse with it. Why? That's a problem I'll get into later. For now, Garzuka steals the fuel diamond from the Mosgram and brings it to Toon World. He then asks Garfield to hide it while he turns Odie, Nermal, and Arlene into superheroes. From there, the plot settles into a generic war between good and evil. There's a lot I'm leaving out for simplicity's sake, but it still sounds complicated. The film solves this with slow pacing. The ideas are given enough time to simmer, so I never found myself overwhelmed like in Battle of the Realms. So where does Garfield choose to hide the diamond? That's the neat part, he doesn't. He just leaves it in his cup holder. In this film, Garfield is a determinist. He believes that good and bad things happen arbitrarily, and trying to change your destiny is futile. It's clearly just his excuse to be lazy, but that internal justification makes him a lot more relatable than expected. When Vetvix gets the fuel diamond back, Garfield is humiliated, and Garzuka tells him to simply wait until the newly established Pet Force defeats her. He accepts this initially, but then says, "Fuck that, I'm getting involved." He disguises himself as Garzuka to lure away the amalgamates, giving Garzuka the opportunity to attack Vetvix. It was really bold of them to give superpowers to all the characters except Garfield, giving him every excuse to kick back and accept his own insignificance. But no, when push came to shove, he did everything within his power and ended up turning the tides, which is a message I have a lot of personal appreciation for. Later, the Pet Force even gets scrambled, and it's Garfield's idea to trick the monster into fighting Vetvix. Speaking of whom, Vetvix herself is probably this film's biggest problem. The other characters are fine. I like how friendly they are, Garzuka especially, but they're pretty one note. Vetvix too is fine toward the start, simple but good at moving the plot forward. Then when she gets the fuel diamond back, they don't really know what to do with her anymore. She said she was going to conquer the entire multiverse, but it only takes her 5 seconds to conquer Toon World. Logically, this means she'd move on to the next universe, right? Well, maybe if they had the budget for that kind of world building. Instead, she swears revenge against Garzuka, which I guess makes sense, he did steal from her. Then when she defeats Garzuka, King John steals her airship, burning like 10 more minutes. Then in the climax, she swears revenge against Garfield himself. Just why? As far as you know, he was only a hostage. It becomes apparent that they're desperate for her to stay in Toon World, even if she has no business there. She even ends in a complete deus ex machina. The Mosgram has been pretty consistent with its function. If you shoot two people with it, they'll trade body parts and be brainwashed. There's also Super Scramble mode, which lets you fuse a ton of things into one brainwashed behemoth. In the end though, Vetvix is scrambled, which fuses her to the concept of a smiley face rather than to the actual smiley faces. She's overcome with such kindness, she marries King John on the spot. If this is brainwashing, it should be rated R. Now that we've explained the concept, we can finally talk about the elephant in the room. This film's animation has aged abysmally. That said, we should respect its circumstances, being released straight to video in 2009. The most successful straight to video series of all time is VeggieTales, which released this film in 2009, and can act as a pretty good comparison. Not only is this film low budget, but it had to make 3D models based on 2D characters, which usually ends horribly. Despite that, the models in this movie are not only appealing, but extremely expressive. You're able to read what the characters are thinking in real time, which usually can't be said for animation this cheap. The overall presentation is a pretty mixed bag though. I mean, these special effects put the amazing bulk to shame. The voice acting is pretty decent across the board with only two major exceptions, Garfield and Garzuka themselves.
I'm here to put an end to your evil ways, Vetvix. Supernova? Huh? I eat 'em for lunch. Let the fur fly.
I just tune out whenever Garfield speaks. He sounds so tired and lifeless. It must be hard to voice a lazy cat without sounding boring, but Bill Murray pulled it off. Garzuka is on the other end of the spectrum, which is weird because it's the same actor.
I was assured this would work.
Maybe it's just going to take some time.
Time is not a luxury we have.
He's doing an Adam West impression, and it's perfect. It glues me into my seat. So many non-comedic lines are made funny by his confident delivery, which brings us to the final point. This movie has a lot of great gags.
You've withstood all of my torture devices. I don't understand.
I'm a cartoon character. We're supposed to squash and stretch.
It isn't a riot, but it's consistently funny. My favorite moment is when Garfield tries to interrupt the climax with a hot dog, but fails, so the climax continues as normal. A lot of these jokes are definitely unintentional though, because there are a lot of moments that clearly need more time in the oven. These ironic laughs really bring up my initial question. Is this film actually good? It sits in my head with Rango and Inanimate Insanity, cartoons that seem awful but I just adore. My perception is probably skewed by the awful circumstances. Production info is scarce, but I can't imagine they had much time and money, and I've never subscribed to the idea that effort shouldn't be rewarded unless the product is good. I'll always have more respect for an ambitious train wreck like Epithet than a flavorless cash grab like Murder Drones. I'll never be able to appreciate something as soulless as Mulan 2020, even if it is higher quality than something passionate like Who Killed Captain Alex. If you were asked to write a movie where Garfield crosses over with himself, you would probably phone it in. I know I would. They easily could have made something like Garfield Gets Real, where the characters just bum around for an hour stealing jokes from SpongeBob. But much like Garfield himself, they said fuck no, we're gonna make this film good, and if we fail, so be it. Ultimately, the things I dislike about this film all stem from the budget, as the studio knew this was destined to be Garfield's place in the dollar bin. It means a lot to me that they actually tried with these gags, dialogue, and especially the message. I guess what I'm really trying to say is, come on Mark, you're better than this.